Dear listeners of the Female Guides Requested podcast, happy Wednesday and welcome to another fantastic episode. I'm your host Ting Ting from Las Vegas, and today's guest is Mercedes Pollmeier. I got in contact with her because we are both connected to the organization Climbers of Color. She offers classes to teach people on how to boulder outside safely and also helps them with their performance goals. Mercedes is a seasoned climbing coach and founder of Modus Athletica. She has a master's degree in human movement and sports conditioning and holds certification in NSCA strength and conditioning, precision nutrition, and GMB training. She is also a former semi-pro tennis player and competition climber. Her approach to coaching is grounded in experience and fueled by a commitment to foster a vibrant community culture within Modus Athletica. She believes that climbing is more than just a physical challenge. It's an enriching journey that reveals our true potential. Thus, she offers a holistic approach to climbing training that prioritizes longevity, health, and personal growth. I had so much fun interviewing Mercedes. I got to ask many questions about guiding bouldering and explored many aspects on learning and teaching movements. I even got to ask some self-serving questions about how to train when my guiding schedule gets crazily packed. Mercedes really cares about what she does and invests deeply in things she's passionate about. If you are a climber who is looking to enhance your performance while nurturing your well-being, check out Modus Athletica. Now, please enjoy this episode with Mercedes. So thank you so much for coming to this interview. So this podcast is Female Guys requested, but it's not very bound to traditional type of guiding. But I did interview a lot of the mountain guys or rock guys that mostly work outside. But I think you are a very interesting person to interview.
Yeah.
So I did a little research, I also have one of your books. So right now you have two books, right?
Yeah,
Simple Strengths, and the other one is about nutrition. It's a more recent one.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's the title again?
Peak Nutrition.
Peak Nutrition.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice. Maybe, I know what you do, but maybe just in your words, you tell our audience about yourself a little bit. What do you do now and stuff?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. So, oh man, what I do currently, so I'm a strength and conditioning coach. That's my training. That's what I've been focusing on a lot, since I started in the rock climbing world. So really my goal is to help climbers get as strong and healthy as possible to climb. And really as part of getting really strong and healthy, they become better climbers. I also have another focus, which is movement. I love movement training. And so we look a lot at technique. So we've got the strength training plus the health, the deep health side, and then the movement and technique. So I like to bridge those two together in my coaching. And so I have a business called Modus Athletica. And that's what we do. We help a lot of our clients get stronger, get healthier, and move better for climbing. And most of my business is online now. We do courses, we have a membership, and I also do one-on-one coaching. The in-person stuff doesn't happen as often. It's a little harder to do in person because you're relying on a gym, and not all gyms allow, coaching, that sort of thing. But as a fun, like couple times a year, I get to work with climbers of color, which is awesome. And they hire me to take people bouldering outside either for the first time or if they're just new to outdoor bouldering. So that's in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do. And I do a lot of other little things. I write a lot. Like you said, I have 2 books. I write a lot of articles for magazines and other blogs. I have a YouTube channel where I try to like give as much information away for free, and we have a podcast as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I knew
yeah,
that you
it's
have
very
a
new.
YouTube channel, but I didn't
Yeah,
realize you also have a podcast.
yeah, it's on YouTube. The
Okay,
podcast is on
I see.
YouTube. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So is your audience or well, your clients mostly climber? Do you have other athletes who are in other sports too?
Yeah, I would say a lot of our clients are multi-athletes where they might ultra run. We have a lot of runners. We also have a lot of mountaineers who like to do big ascents and then they climb as well. Skiers, that sort of thing. And but I would say most of our clients, they come to us for climbing specifically and to balance out their life a little bit with all of their activities.
So you say that right now almost all your work online,
Yeah.
and at some point I saw that I read somewhere that you work in Seattle Bouldering Project.
Yeah,
It,
that's
do,
right.
do you still work there?
Yeah, just recently I stopped teaching there. I was teaching the strength and conditioning classes there.
I see.
But because of all my traveling, I travel quite a bit. It's hard to maintain a regular class schedule. So yeah, I decided to stop for now. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So maybe I would start asking because even just by your self-introduction, I already add more questions in my list. But maybe I'll start with a little more similar to the guiding parts that you say that
Okay.
you go out with climbers of color for a few
Yeah.
times, take people out bouldering.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that part because so I'm a rock guide, but I typically don't guide bouldering.
Yeah.
So I mean, I even consider myself. I just actually just stopped outside bouldering this year.
Okay. Awesome.
It's kind of
Yes.
it's kind of scary that I've been a
Yeah.
climber for so long, but
Yeah.
it's just a very new discipline to me.
Totally.
Some and sometimes our company, or very occasionally, people request because Vegas, Red Rock is a
Yeah.
bouldering mecca, so would request
Yeah.
us to take people bouldering, but then it never materialized. So in
Mm,
any way,
hmm.
so I'm just kind of curious. I'm just now can only imagine that
Yeah.
what is like guiding bouldering outside. So
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
kind of describe that? So how many people do you have, and then what do you have to
Totally.
prep, and then what do you teach them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, developing a bouldering curriculum definitely took a while. Because like you said, there's not a lot of people doing it. I think a lot of guiding companies don't offer it because maybe it's a little weird for liability or something like that,
I think insurance they were talking about,
Yeah,
yeah, something
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
totally. And I know that, so I work with Mountain Madness. They're the ones who hire me. And I think they feel like being able to figure it out. And so I've built out a pretty decent curriculum now that I feel really confident where I can take a brand new person outside. They have to be climbing though. So this is one of the prerequisites for
So they
our
can't be
intro to
like brand
bouldering.
new.
No, they
Okay.
they have to understand climbing in their body a little bit. I think one of my prerequisites is that you've been bouldering indoors maybe for a year or something like that, that you have an
Okay.
understanding of climbing anyway. So if you've been climbing on ropes, great, you have an understanding of climbing. And so when we meet up, really the first thing, like everything we talk about, I'm sure you talk about this too, is safety. And climbing is a lot about falling. You're going to be falling a lot, especially in bouldering. So we kind of like front load a lot of that information. This is how we're going to set up the pads. This is how we're going to teach you how to spot and how to spot correctly. And then we spend at least I would say 45 minutes on how to fall. So we work on very easy falling movement to begin with onto the pads, so they know what it feels like to fall on their feet and on their back on the pads. Um, and that way they get really comfortable with the impact. And then we take them up a little bit higher, fall a little bit more. So they just get comfortable with it. Because, I think in the beginning, with anyone, when you're in a group of people and you're new to something, you want to maybe prove to other people that you can do it. And so some people may push themselves past a comfort zone. And that's where I've seen actually the most injuries is where this person pushed a little bit past beyond their limits and then something bad happens. Like they take a really weird fall. Like they didn't realize how far off the ground they were. So all of that, we talk about that in the beginning, and it's, always climb to your comfort or even a little bit below. This isn't about performance. This is about getting really, really comfortable bouldering outside. So I would say that takes at least a couple hours. So, we teach you how to spot, how to place the pads as well. So we do set up scenarios where if there's a rock on the ground, we show you how to place pads around that. We talk about angles and fall zones. So depending on what the angle of the rock is, where you should be padding. Yeah, so that's a huge part of it. And I think for our classes for Bouldering 1, I have an assistant instructor. And so we take out, I think, up to 10 folks outside.
Okay. So you will have you and the assistant, and then maybe up to maybe 1 to 5, say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a 1 to 5. So after all of the safety stuff, we warm up as well. We also do a little warm up because it's me, that's part of my job.
I mean, warm up is important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we start climbing, and this is where we go really step by step. Even if you have been bouldering inside and you feel proficient, I still get everyone to do this where we choose one climb that I know I know the route really well. I know that the top out is really safe. And we just go one move at a time. So we'll step on, here's the start, we'll do one move, and then you practice dropping from there. And everyone does that. And then we do 2 moves, and then we do 3 moves, and then we just continue to build up this climb one move at a time. And since I've implemented this process, everyone who comes out with me ends up topping a boulder. And that's success. That's what people wanted. And they always leave really happy. And I've been able to find boulders, so we guide in Leavenworth, which is notoriously very difficult, for even a seasoned boulderer. Leavenworth is quite difficult. So I've been really having to find the right boulders for brand new boulders. And it's worked out really well. And I think in Vegas there's a lot of really awesome beginner boulders. I wish I had access to the boulders out there for beginners, because they could learn so quickly. It's just a better environment, I think, to learn bouldering. And in the process of doing these moves one at a time, we talk a little bit about sequencing, a little bit about the ethics of bouldering.
When you mean the ethic, you mean for example, not destroy the vegetation, that type of thing, or
we talk about the environmental impact. We talk about
no boom box, that type of thing.
What do you do in groups? What do you do if you come up to a boulder and there's people already there, or if you're there and a group of people come up? We talk about brushing the chalk off of holds. Do you step on crash pads with muddy shoes? Things like that. So it's a lot of these topics tend to just naturally come up. I don't have a set list of things, because that can potentially get overwhelming. So just naturally, as things come up, we talk about it. Yeah.
So how long is it like for a day? Because for me, it's like if I go bouldering outside, I don't think I can last all day on.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For sure. Like we always allocate a lot more time, but people definitely get tired before the end. And so I think our session is a 5 hour session.
Mm-hmm.
We are normally done, like most people are pretty much done at around the like 3.5, 4 hour mark. And then the rest of the time we'll go and walk around and look at boulders and we'll look at the guidebook and just talk about like, here's some other things that you could do. How would you pad this up? How would you sequence this climb? So we kind of just do a little tour of depending on like which area we're going to. Some people might bring their climbing shoes and try a boulder, but it's nothing really like we've stopped climbing at that point.
I see.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
mentioned that that's boulder one, you said. So you
That's
also have
bouldering
boulder
one.
two?
Yeah. So we have a bouldering two. Um, that one has been interesting. This is really for rock performance. So, it's really designed to help people excel on boulders outside. And so we talk about resting, like how to sequence, what to do, like what's your warm up look like? Um, we talk about projecting tactics, because that a lot of the time, at least for the boulders, I know they go outside to try and project a couple different things. And so that there's so much in projecting tactics for bouldering, and that takes up a lot of time as well. We'll do a lot of video review, so like I'll take video of the climbers, and we'll talk about the technique. Um, yeah. And so that's a fun one. It's not as big. It's really just me, and I generally take out like maybe 3 or 4 climbers at a time for that one.
Right. It seems like if that type of curriculum would be a little bit
Hmm.
hard with
Yeah.
like a big group, huh?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the bouldering two, then their prerequisite is just like, okay, they've been bouldering,
Yeah.
all right, so
They've
they
been
know how to
bouldering.
fall,
Hmm.
they know
Yeah.
how to, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It would be difficult to do a brand new boulder outside. If they've been projecting a lot indoors, like I still wouldn't feel super comfortable taking someone into bouldering too if they're feeling really strong in the gym.
And the reason for that,
Because of like kind of what you said, like they haven't learned how to fall yet.
mm,
They don't know how to spot like the setting up the crash pads. Like all of the safety stuff hasn't been part of their toolbox at all. So I'd like them to be able to at least get some of that under their belt.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you said that you train people about the, well, getting stronger, eat better, move
Hmm.
well. And
Yeah.
so for me, I'm always curious about, so there's a lot of online coaching and stuff. And
Yeah.
for me, it seems like strength training is a little bit easier to do it online. But
Yeah.
the the movement coaching,
Yeah.
uh, it's a little bit tricky. I don't know whether,
Totally.
how do you do that? Because,
Yeah.
yeah,
It is really hard. It's definitely, it's better to do it in person. But there are, when it comes to movement and knowing the progression of climbing, you kind of understand that there are categories that people need to work on. So for most people, actually, even advanced climbers, we look a lot at their foot precision, their extension in their body, like how far are they able to reach? Like, do they have the awareness of that? Um,
so you mean
and
this box that,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Are you using your full box?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, Being able to rotate your hips in, and then so that would be one category, which would be like, are you using your feet and legs appropriately? And then the next category that I see that comes up a lot is learning dynamic movement. And so because we have a very clear, like we know like these are the common issues, we have drills specifically for to fix some of these issues. And for online, people have to be really comfortable with taking video and then sending it to us. So that if they're comfortable with that, then we can really like it's actually not so bad. Like if we can see the video, do some corrections on the video, and then they go try again and then resubmit the video either on the same climb. It doesn't have to be, but it's really about just being intentional. And when someone is intentional about a specific technique, they improve it. It changes the experience of it.
And then do people send you video they climbing inside or the outside?
Always inside. It's a lot easier for us to see, like as coaches, because we know the holds really well. We understand like the angles in the gym. Outdoor is really hard, I have to say.
That's
like,
what I was wondering. Then
yeah,
when you
like
ask people to take video, so you were the bouldering too, right?
yeah.
So,
Hmm.
but I guess you were there, so you know the boulder. So,
Yeah. Yep.
so you
Yep.
can analyze that
Yeah.
better. But if it's
Hmm.
people just like, okay, here's an outside boulder, then it's probably
Yeah.
tricky.
It is trickier. So when they do send us climbs of outdoor ropes or boulders, they have to describe the terrain to us a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's slightly overhanging here. There's like a bulge. Like you can't see that stuff on, when it's one angle on a climbing wall. Um, so there's just a lot more talking about what is the terrain. And then once I understand that, then it's a lot easier to give them uh, some feedback on their movement. And a lot of the time when it's outdoors, it's more about asking them questions. Like how did they feel? What do they think they need to do? Are there other feet that they could use? So with outdoors, it's a lot more exploration, which is kind of cool. Like that's really where a lot of people learn is like this explorative journey. Um, and we try to do that for indoors as well. Just ask a lot of questions. So a lot of the time people can self-correct if you just give them a little bit of a path to follow.
I see. So
Yeah.
you have some categories like, okay, these are the category I possibly can
Mhm.
look into because a
Yeah.
lot of people make similar mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the inside video, I mean, yeah, the inside bouldering, you can kind of see the holes. And then do you still ask questions about the angle of the hole, how slopey the foothold, or that
Yeah.
type of thing?
Um, inside, we don't ask terrain questions as much. It's more about how did you feel? Did it feel like you were at your full extension? Did you feel confident? Uh, did it feel hard or did it just feel complex? Um, and so some of those questions can often lead the climber to an answer for themselves of what they need to correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it's kind of a combination of explicit feedback where like this is what you need to do, and then as well as like uh, exploration feedback where we just ask questions.
I see. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to relay because
Yeah.
sometimes, so I teach people crack climbing
Yeah.
outside.
Mhm.
And then sometimes that people, even though we're guiding, but sometimes people still expect us to teach them how to move. Then so we
Okay.
we have to observe. And
Yeah.
I found for me is so I have some students I work with them for multiple session, and those are the easiest one because I start to see trend, or
Yeah.
I can realize oh they just tend to work in a certain way. But
Yeah.
then when the brand new people come in, you're just I found it difficult because I also don't want to overwhelm them with too much detail. I
Totally.
want to just see what's the most low hanging fruit, the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
principle thing. So,
Totally.
so I'm just kind of curious to just
Yeah.
trying to steal some wisdom
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
how to teach movements is kind of
Yeah.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, like the other part of movement, like so you can use it like those kind of like bigger categories because I know for sure like trad climbing has like similar issues where they don't trust their position, like they don't trust their foot in a certain way. But the other part that affects movement is mindset. So if they're
Yes.
not confident, if they're hesitating a lot, then that's going to change their movement. And that's also part of that, like asking them questions can often lead to like, oh, okay, so you're actually experiencing fear here. It's not your technique, it's your fear. And then you can maybe talk a little bit about that and work on one thing, that you feel might help that athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you manage people's, say, frustration? Say,
Yeah.
sometimes you will say, okay, you need to rotate instead of being face your hip in, say,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then, it's just people tend to do whatever so used to do. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit hard for,
Exactly.
just like you say it once and they will just totally do
Yeah.
exactly what you want them to do. Or
Yeah.
so sometimes I found, like, obviously climbers always have all sorts of frustration at some point. Like even I will have just like, darn, like, why can I do this move? And
Yeah.
I don't know, like, do you like encounter that, and how do you manage that for them to
Mm.
help them to keep trying or don't lose hope or
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, I think it depends on like the move that they're doing or how frustrated they're getting. And in a class setting, I often front load a lot of like expectations, like, like what are your expectations for today? And are those expectations realistic? And also you're here to learn. And so with learning, there's going to come a lot of falling. And really the only way you learn is to fail. You have to fail. And so like that's going to be a big part of your process. Yeah, and I would say if it's possible, if truly it's a movement issue, like they're not being held back by fear, then like if there's a way to do it, just try to get them on something easier just to practice that move. Like, this is what I mean. And then they can practice it in a situation where they can easily perform the movement, and then they get it, they understand it in their head, and then they try it again on whatever climb that they're doing. It won't always work, but they have an understanding of how to connect the two. Like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, but this is what I am doing. So it's like you're building up their awareness, you know, and then you can say it's okay. Like, keep practicing. This is going to become habitual as you practice it, you
Yeah.
know.
And
Um,
yeah, go
mhm.
ahead.
Yeah, I think for like more maybe advanced movement where with any skill, it is really hard in the moment to rationalize it and know that in the future it'll get better. But with any skill, like you have to learn it. And in climbing, you don't ever repeat the exact same move. It's always a new move every time, no matter what. And even if you repeat a climb, it feels a little different somehow, you know? Um, and so in order to get better at some of these like more advanced movements, you really do have to practice, 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 and just be okay with like, okay, I'm going to try this move again. It's okay. I fell. What can I do better this next time? Well, what do I need to focus on this next move? And take the focus away from the failing and more just on what do you got to do next? Yeah.
Yes. So I like that you said about setting the expectation, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then progress not necessarily means sending. Sending is not the only way to
Right.
indicate
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Hmm.
But then people like to send, right? Obviously.
Totally.
So
Yep.
it's I've seen a lot of people, it's hard, even for me, it's hard to say, now I can make this one move and I feel like a
Yeah.
huge success,
Yeah,
right? So,
totally.
definitely the mindset, like you said, I have to
Mhm.
front load and then graduate people
Yeah,
can realize because people want to see they improve.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Hmm.
um, I mean, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
And another question for you, I know that you have compete before, right?
Hmm.
And you were
Yeah.
good. You
Yeah.
mentioned in the article it's
Thanks.
at national level. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and I always have this question that in in my mind, well, nowadays the inside bouldering is kind of crazy. There's a lot of move that I don't know how to do, like running, jump, and
Yeah.
paddling
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But my argument is, I still think this is my belief. You can correct me later if you think you disagree. But I think movement is movement, and then people argue that, oh, you don't see this movement outside. In my opinion, is because back then, inside people just train inside, so they simulate the movement from outside, bring it inside. But now people can create or discover new movement inside, but then maybe they help them to see the movement outside. So they can still find that outside bouldering. So
Totally.
that's my opinion.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
think that inside and outside, there's definitely difference, but I think it's more of an environmental difference. So
Hmm.
give people a little bit different pressure. Like for example,
Yeah.
I don't perform as good outside bouldering than inside because I'm afraid. So I'm still
Yeah.
afraid
Hmm.
outside bouldering. But somehow I
Yeah.
feel physically I probably can do similarly. But on rope, I climb the same inside and outside because
Okay.
for me it's so. But then my clients, they all just like, they always say, oh, I can climb this inside, but how can I have to downgrade so much outside? And then some of my guy friends, they climb really well outside because that's where there's their playground. They just like, oh, I start climbing inside. But then
Yeah.
I think there's something is interesting here.
Yeah.
So I was wondering
Totally.
how your opinion about how you bring what you learn outside from inside climbing and how you
Yeah.
learn your inside climbing and then you can bring it back to outside climbing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have so many thoughts on this, like so many thoughts.
Yeah, let's
Because
hear it.
um I think first it depends on how you started climbing. I think that's where you're gonna find the most comfort, you know. And I see this a lot. I see people who mostly climb outside cannot climb in the gym at all. It's like blowing their mind. They're like, this isn't like outside climbing at all. And same for like the transition to outdoors. And I think the grading is one of the hardest thing for people to really overcome because they're like, I can climb V3 in the gym, but I can't even climb V0 outside. Like, yes, climbing outside is very hard. That's just, that's it. Like, it is very, very hard. Like, I think in the gym, what I love about the gym, it's so accessible. We can teach people uh, how to move in the gym and give them something to strive for. The grades often don't parallel until a certain level. I think maybe like once you get to about V6, V7, maybe it starts to mimic what you might find outside, maybe. I don't know about ropes because I don't climb a lot of ropes indoor and outdoor, so I can't really speak to that. Um, but yes, like I would agree that movement is movement. There's global movement where you can learn a lot of variety. And when you're learning a lot of variety and movement, that's actually better for our learning. When, so if you have a lot of novel movements, when you encounter something, let's say outside, you're able to figure out like the problem solving process you can get through it a lot faster because you've just spent a lot of time trying a lot of different moves. So you have this toolbox of like, oh yeah, I can try this and I can try that. I can jump to it instead of like having to go static. So yeah, I completely agree that indoor 100% I think is like useful for outdoor climbing. And I think in outdoor climbing, for some people, because it depends on the terrain, you know, like in Red Rocks, it's a certain type of rock and like the holds are shaped in a very specific way that you get really good at that. And this is all you're really good at. And then you go to the gym and now it's like, whoa, like these holds are shaped differently. And so you're just not used to this variability. And so I can see the transition indoor being very difficult, you know? So, and it at the end of the day, I think it just depends on, do you like to climb? And does it matter what you're climbing on? You know, like if you like to climb, the grade shouldn't matter too much. We want to improve. We'll see improvement, but the actual grade really shouldn't matter when it comes to just climbing. Like we just love to climb. I'm going to climb whatever, you know, anything that feels safe to me. What other thoughts do I have? You know, board climbing is fascinating to me. I love board climbing. The training boards, like the tension board, we got the kilter board, the moon board. I think those are definitely set up more as a training simulator for outdoor climbing. And I think it actually transfers better to outdoor climbing sometimes than it might for indoor climbing. Because it's so static. Like outdoors, we see a lot more static movement, a lot more control because the risk is a lot higher outdoors, you know. And so I do see like if you want to really get better at outdoor climbing and have training specifically for that, then the board climbing is going to be where you're going to see the greatest gains for strength. But if we're talking about movement, I think gym climbing is amazing for movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, because a lot of people ask me the question is that, oh, how come I can climb this inside? And obviously, mostly they focus on the grade.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I can climb so and so grade inside, and I can climb this outside. So, and a lot of time to just make them more comfortable, I have to think hard about, okay, you know, outside, you're a little bit more stressed, and then the rock is a little bit different, and then the terrain is different, and then you need to find your own hold, and yada, and all that.
Yeah.
But then
right.
after that answer those questions, I just like, well, then how can I encourage them say, oh, this is what you did inside. Look, it's not very different outside.
Yeah, totally.
So that has been like my challenge is that what's the same inside and outside while people are being put in a very different environment and trying to think. Look, you did this movement inside. It's side pull as a side pull.
Yeah,
it's the same.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, I think it really does blow people's minds when they're in a different environment.
Yeah,
you know, even just one climbing area to the next. Like if you go from Red Rocks to the Red River Gorge, you know, like, oh my God, like it's completely different. And people are going to feel so different and probably won't climb the same grade.
Nice. You know? Yeah. I mean, definitely. Yeah. At least you need to spend some time to get used to the new area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like what you said. Like, a side pull is a side pull. That's it. That's it.
And then let me ask you another self-serving question, and then I would like to talk about your background.
Okay. Yeah.
So one thing I might struggle is, you know, so Red Rock actually has, so I got in Red Rock, and Red Rock has a very long season. But still we have the busy time, like for example, March, April, or October and November is gonna be really busy.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
I will be getting exhausted and can't do my own personal climbing. And
Yeah.
that's when I feel like I'm regressing, just like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm like
Totally.
weaker. I can't pull. I can't jump.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of times, but I still have interest about myself performance climbing goal. And I just like wondering, do you coach people that who might have some physical demanding job? Then
Mm.
is that just like sometimes I tell myself it's just 2 months doing a little bit low intense climbing. It's not gonna kill my climbing, but it's still
Right.
hard that when you just like you totally stop your personal climbing.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
wondering whether you have any experience coaching that type of people, that any advice for those people.
Yeah. I almost every season I'm coaching a guide. Like I've had a lot of guides come through, and it is a lot about managing energy. That's the biggest thing. Like, how do you manage your energy, and what are your expectations for that season? Like you're not going to be able to
We'll come
perform.
back to expectation.
Yeah,
Indiana.
coming back to the expectations, and it's good because that way you have control. You're making a decision like, okay, for the next 2 months, this is what I'm focusing on, and it's okay. And then once the season is done, I can transition. And since I know that this is what I'm going to be doing, what are the things that I can keep doing that are going to continue to help me feel healthy, help me feel strong, and hopefully not regress too much, because regression to me, without knowing too much about how much time you're spending out there, but often that means you could be doing too much. Like regression really is like you're not recovering. You're never fully recovered. And so you're just like digging further and further, and seeing worse climbing, which happens to a lot of guides. So I think that it really is just managing your energy, like knowing what days you're guiding, and then on your off days, what are you choosing to do? Like, like even if you like, yes, if you do an easy session, sometimes that could be too hard. So what could you do that's like one step below that? And it's not always easy climbing. It could actually be moderate to hard climbing, but for only 30 minutes. That might actually be better than doing, an hour and a half of like easy climbing, because like endurance sometimes takes a lot more energy than short bursts of hard climbing.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it can be easier to recover from, especially if it's a very short session. Um, so like these are some things you could play around with, like session length, session intensity, but generally keep the session shorter, you know.
Yeah.
And I think flexibility training, not hard flexibility training, but the flexibility training where you use a little bit of weight, and you can work on range of motion, and it just helps you to recover, because like stretching turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you to recover. So there are some like activities that you can do to maybe help you recover a little faster, like sauna, things like that.
Yeah, I like that you said about
Hmm.
the energy
Yeah.
and expectation too. I
Yeah.
think sometimes just realize that, I never thought that it could be just doing too much. But I do know that every time I have an endurance session, I actually do need to rest a lot longer than just
Yeah.
doing some hard problem by short time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Wow, thanks.
So yeah, that could be a nice little change for you. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so how did you get into climbing? I learned from one of the articles that you used to play tennis.
That's right. Yeah. I was a tennis player. I, you know,
Since how old were
I
you?
I think I picked up my first tennis racket when I was like 6,
Whoa.
maybe. Actually, no, I think I was 3. I think I was 3 years old, but I didn't take it seriously until I was 13. When I was 13, I decided tennis is the thing I want to do. I want to play pro. I want to go all the way. And I almost got all the way. I went to the semi-pro level, which is like just one step lower. And yeah, so I played tennis until I was about 25, which is like
Wow.
okay. But at that point, like you have to make a decision or quit your job and just play tennis. But I knew at that time I think I had reached my peak. I was like, I think I've done the best that I could with the resources that I had. And I was, at the end of the day, I was really happy with it. While I was in it, I was not happy. I was like, oh, I gotta be better. Um, I did have a world ranking, which was really cool, but honestly, I never wrote it down because I was so disappointed in myself. I was, only now, like, wait, I had a world ranking in tennis?
Yeah, it's
What? Like,
amazing.
what? Yeah.
Yeah.
But, at the time, it's just like, it was just never good enough. And yeah, it was hard. Like, I was coaching tennis 10 hours a week, maybe more. And then I was playing tennis
Well,
about
you were
15 to
doing too
20 hours.
much, right? Like you,
Exactly. I was doing a lot and I was just not playing as well as I could be because I was just exhausted. And you don't get paid. You don't get paid at the
mm,
semi-pro level. You get some stuff, like you get sponsorships. You might have like tournament fees paid for you, which is actually really expensive. Um, but you have to pay for your own travel, and you have to hire a coach. And luckily, like the club that I was teaching at had some great coaches, and so they would hit with me. Yeah, I tried really hard, and I'm really proud of myself of how far I got. And what was cool, so in the transition of becoming pro, like semi-pro, I started training in a climbing gym. So I knew one of my biggest deficits was strength. Like I had really good movement, I was really fast, but I just didn't feel strong. And so there was a strength coach in Denver who was in a climbing gym. And I found him because I went to the climbing gym with a friend of mine. They were like, you should come climbing. I'm like, great. Like, this sounds fun. And I went to the Paradise Rock gym. It's no longer there, unfortunately. But I saw this strength coach coaching folks. I'm like, I need that. And I started working with him, and he actually got me to climb a little bit just to help me with my upper body because I had major shoulder issues because like serving it's such a high velocity movement. And so I really had to get as strong as I could, and like climbing was great for the shoulders, as long as you're not doing too much. And yeah, so I got really strong and it was awesome. And I realized as I was like in these tournaments and just not getting the results I wanted, I was like, I really like climbing. I really like climbing. Um, what if I just quit tennis and took up climbing? And so that's what I did. I just decided, you know what? Like, plus the tennis community and the culture is very different.
uh,
In tennis, you don't get to have a lot of friends. They're all your enemies, because you want to kill them on the court. Like really, it's like you have to crush them and you have to beat them in order to get ahead. So the tennis community is not super supportive, like yeah, didn't really have a lot of friends. Like the folks at the club that I worked at were awesome. I love them but we're not competing. We're just like hitting against
uh.
each other and it's fun.
So when you are
But I
competing, you are like enemy.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's the mindset, Like that's what they teach you. It doesn't have to be like that, but unfortunately, like, and it's still there, it's still very much prevalent. It's an individual sport. And so you're out there by yourself. You're like having to make sure you do everything you can to win. And it's never being nice to people, And I think that could change. I think that's something that we could definitely change. Yeah. But my experience with climbing, it was very different. And I remember, like, after I trained for like a couple of years, I remember my first national where I don't know if you know Chelsea Rude. She's a coach. I think she coaches for Climb Strong.
I,
She's a fantastic climber, like phenomenal. And I remember just like always looking up to her. She was either a little bit younger than me, but I knew like how strong she was. And she was next to me when we were like out in the competition. She was next to me in the chair, and she like cheered me on. She was like, "It's okay, Mercedes, you got this." And I was like, "What? Like you're like we're literally competing against each other, but you're supporting me because you want me to do really well." And like that just like warmed my heart, and I knew at that point I'm like, "Oh yeah, like the climbing community is really where I want to be." And yeah, I
nice.
easily made that transition over to climbing.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I watch a lot of World Cup competition while
Yeah.
streaming. I just watched the
Yeah.
Japan Cup.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I and then I think, it seems like competitors are friends.
Totally.
They
Yes.
and then I trying to think, one time I trying to think whether that's real. But then for me, I just like when you see somebody try so hard on the boulder, even you might lose, you want this person to send.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
yeah, I
Yes.
want them
Yeah.
to succeed because
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's real. I think it's 100% real. Like there's some really wonderful relationships in the World Cup circuit. Like they are very loving and very supportive because I think what you learn from climbing, like you're not head to head like you are in tennis. You're not
right,
competing that way where you're competing again on a terrain that someone else made up. Um, and really it's like problem solving. Like how can we problem solve this in this competition? And who's going to be the first one? And it's not always the strongest. Sometimes it's the smartest climber that day. And it just depends on the setting. And I think that's like just wild to me. Like every competition can be so different and different results will come up unless you're like
yeah,
one of
yeah,
the
got my friend.
best, like one of the best, like you have been around, how to problem solve, you're strong, Um, but yeah, I think it's just a different mentality and climbing competitions didn't come about until later. Like we were really climbers and trying to do these ascents before it became a competition. I think maybe in the mountaineering world it was a little different. But in climbing, it was just like we're just training. We're trying to have some fun. Trying to unlock new movement. Yeah, so I really do, I think the community can be like very wonderful for sure.
And then so how do you like climbing? Like why just like okay, I really love climbing.
Yeah, I think because it really put me in the moment and in my body. With tennis, I didn't really have a lot of um I wouldn't say that like my coaching, like the coaches that I had were great. They were awesome. They taught me how to move really well, but they didn't teach me how to have like a even just a different mindset. Like I was kind of a train wreck mentally on the court. Like I would be very disappointed in myself very quickly early on in a match and wouldn't be able to turn it around. It wasn't until much later that I learned how to kind of just let things go. But that wasn't part of the coaching, like the mental side. And so I struggled a lot just mentally on the court and would never be present and would never feel my body and enjoy what I'm doing. But with climbing, it's like you kind of have to be in the moment and you're feeling the rock and you're just enjoying like every single move. At least that's my experience. And uh, I just feel the movement so much more when I'm climbing, than when I'm competing when I'm playing tennis. My relationship with tennis has changed for sure. I definitely love to just go out and hit now, just purely for the movement and for no other reason. Um, but yeah, that's why I climb. I love it just because it feels so good in my body. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the climbing is known for you need to have that head too. Like
Yeah.
your mind
Hmm.
has to be in it.
Yeah.
It's all kind of integrate,
Yeah.
right? So,
It is.
um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think going back to like the progression, like how do you see progress? If you're not sending, how do you see progress? And for me, I think it was really obvious. Even if I wasn't sending, I was so happy with the smallest improvements. Like I really love that. I'm like, oh, this is like here's my project. I've gotten like 50% of the way and I'm okay with that and I'm gonna keep going and I'm gonna keep showing up and trying and trying and trying. Like some of my projects have been year-long projects, you know. Um and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. Like I don't necessarily feel bad about myself compared to like maybe in tennis I would because it wasn't always so obvious the progression I was making.
huh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Was that because? Well, I mean, I know you are good at climbing, but originally I want to ask a stupid question. Is that was that because you are super good on tennis, so it's a little bit hard to see the
Yeah.
your progress?
Really
But
hard.
then, I mean, you're
Yeah.
also good on climbing, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I,
and
I
why
think
is that
it
it's easier?
I don't I don't know. Maybe because I took a lot of pressure off myself. That could also be part of it. You
Right.
know, like it felt like a very like a huge choice in my life that I made that I'm like I'm gonna be a climber now. And tennis, it was a choice, but not really. Like it was I had to choose something, and tennis was the thing that I was where most of my friends were actually. Like I was like, okay, let's do that. And my mom was really like she really wanted me to play tennis. And so there was a little bit of that. Like the family pressure was definitely there. You know, my mom was really hoping, you know, that I would make it big. But with climbing, I didn't have any of that. It was like, I don't even care how far I get. Like, I would like to push myself as much as I can, but I didn't have like this vision, which is weird. Like, it was mostly like how much can I push myself and enjoy this thing, you know? And I've definitely gone through ups and downs in climbing where I had to question why I'm doing this. And, you know, like there were definitely times I would get wrapped up in how hard I was climbing and the value and worth that a climbing grade put on me. Like, oh, if I'm not climbing this grade, that means I'm not a good climber. You know, like I've definitely gone through all of that. But, you know, quickly realized that that's all arbitrary. You know, it doesn't mean anything at the end
So
of the day.
yeah. So I have two questions. Obviously, you're just like, okay, you have this feeling of yeah, you feel good, and now I achieve maybe this problem 50%. I'll just
Yeah.
keep doing it.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned that you ask your clients about how they feel.
Yeah.
So, so obviously, feeling is this subjective thing
Yeah.
that, but you certainly ask this question: how do you phrase it? What do you want to know from them about
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
they feel? Why is it important?
Yeah. Each person will answer that very differently. And so, depending on their answer, we might go in one direction or the other. Um, I think when it comes to like really what I'm trying to get at is their confidence. Like, how confident are they feeling? If they're on a training plan and they're working really hard, I will say, how is your body feeling? And then they'll tell me, oh, my body's feeling tired or my body's feeling really good. So I'll ask specifically, but then generally it's like, how are you feeling? That opens the door to them telling me whatever it is that they want to tell me, you know, um, and my hope is that we get to a point where we're talking about their climbing and what they're noticing for themselves as they're going through this program or this coaching. And, you know, like some days it'll be I'm feeling discouraged, and some days it'll be like okay, I'm feeling um I'm feeling really good. And normally I'll ask them, well, what does that mean? What does feeling good mean? So that they can put some, because feeling is like, it's very nebulous. Like you can't physically touch a thing in a feeling, you know? And so if we can put some words to the thing that they're feeling, then they can always come back to it. So on a good day, these are some specific words that they can use to be like, okay, this is where I'm at. So let's see for an example. Um, like some words like explosive. I feel really explosive. I feel strong. I feel um I feel light. I feel like I can flow. Those are some really good words to put in the soup of like, oh, I feel really good, you know. And then other like on the other side of it, like I'm not feeling good. Like it normally that means I'm feeling like irritated, distracted is another one. Um, intimidated, that's a big one. I feel like especially at the gym. Um, yeah. So some of those are like mindset and some of it is like physical. Yeah.
But it seems like my impression from the previous conversation is that your coaching seems like you ask a lot of questions,
Yeah,
right?
I do. Yeah.
Uh, it's in terms of just look at this video. Oh, I think you should correct this, this, and that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
approaching like you ask questions, and then is that because you think that this person might already know the answer? You just kind of want to
Yeah.
facilitate that,
That's
or
right.
oh, it's
That's it.
something. Oh, okay.
That's it exactly. They at the end of the day, you always know what's best for you and what you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I think
mhm,
that troubleshooting a lot of time. I used to be an engineer, and then so
yeah.
you need a lot of troubleshooting. You know, I code, and
Yeah.
then you need to debug. You know, so you have to troubleshoot. And I found that asking the right questions is very important,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, is that like your approach too? Just like okay,
Totally.
uh huh,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I used to be a coach that used to just give a lot of the answers away because I thought that's what people wanted. And at the end of the day, like while it might um like it feels more satisfying from a client to be like, oh, okay, now I've got the answer and now I can do this thing. But long term, that client isn't going to be able to help themselves. And like really coaching is about helping a client help themselves, you know, because we can't be there the whole time. Like this is a journey that you're doing on your own and we're just here to guide you, you know. And so yeah, I would say in the last like, you know, 12 years, maybe a little bit more, I've like had to change that. You know, when I first started coaching, it was more explicit. Um, yeah, and it's harder. It feels harder as a coach to like you want to give that person the answer, but they have to arrive at it, you know, on their own, or at least like after a lot of questions. And if they still haven't gotten it yet, that's okay. Here's the answer, and here's why. Here's why that's the answer. And we kind of go backward from there. Um, and yeah, I'm still learning what those right questions are.
and do you even say ask help them like from what you learn help them to ask themselves the right question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that, you know, that takes a lot of time. It's again like these categories for movement.
Mm.
You have to understand movement first. So, especially if you're a newer climber, or maybe if you're a climber who's just naturally actually very good at climbing, but you don't have a lot of awareness of what the shapes that you're making or why you're doing this move so well. So there is like this learning curve. Like you do have to understand what the movement is in order to correct it. So like yes, there's a lot of like we're going to give you the answer in the beginning, like all of the stuff. Here's what it is. Still through asking questions, but the process is not as long in the beginning. We have to paint that picture first.
I see. So how long have you been coaching?
Oh man, so I was a tennis coach
Oh, okay, that's
first,
right. Yeah.
and I actually started coaching when I was 15. I started coaching little kids, uh, and then when I was about 21 was when I started coaching for the clubs, and I would coach high school teams. I actually coached a couple youth tennis players who were very good. Like they also made it like semi-pro. Um, yeah, and so I've like had an array of athletes since I was like very young,
I
like
see.
2021. But I got into climbing coaching, I think when I was about 26, 25, 26. Like after a couple of years of climbing, then I started coaching. Yeah.
And wow, after a couple of years, that was really quick.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
uh do you find that good to just start coaching uh earlier than I don't, actually don't know because I've met a lot of coaches that have been all climbing for like long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you've been coaching for a long time. What did you find? Did you find any similar thing about coaching tennis and coaching climbing?
Yeah. Like at the end of the day, it actually doesn't matter how hard you're climbing or how long you've been climbing for. I think at the end of the day, if you know how to ask those questions and and have empathy for the person that you're working with, um, that's I think what really matters at the end of the day. Like I feel like I have a really good eye for movement. Like that movement has always been an obsession of mine since the very beginning. Since like I was like 6, I remember going to gymnastics and being like really obsessed with this one move that I was trying to do, like the bar muscle up. Um, and when I coached tennis, I was like the technique person. Like people will come to me just to work on technique and unlock new movement. Um, and it's the same for climbing. I don't know what it is. I don't because I really like watching how the body moves. I think that's really like maybe the source of it. Um, but again, I don't think you need to have that in order to be a good coach. Like, I think you have to have a good understanding of the sport. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Those questions are really that's it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, totally.
Hmm.
I mean, you have like a good eye, and then in genuine, genuine interested
Yeah,
in observing people,
that's right.
and then
Yeah.
ask questions. It
Yeah.
seems like pretty
Yeah.
key. I think
Yeah.
everybody, every climber should learn that to a
Yeah.
certain level, right?
Yep.
Like taking
Absolutely.
video, observe themselves, ask the
Yep.
right question. Because sometimes I look at my video, I don't know what kind of
Yeah.
question should I ask.
Yep.
Do you talk about
Totally.
it to your client? Just like, oh,
Yeah.
let's practice. Look at your own climbing
Yeah.
video. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Normally, so if I get a video and they might say, "Oh, I'm struggling with this move," and then the first question is, "What do you think is going on? Like,
Mm,
why are you struggling?" And then I
right.
might get an answer. Like, okay, like I think this is what's happening. They might give like one or two things, which is really good. That's awesome. Now we're getting them to think about why they failed on this move. And then I say, well, what if like A, B, or C? Like, what if your leg was in a different position? Like, have you thought about that? What if you thought about reaching a little further instead of like going for a specific point on the hold? Um, so in that way, I'm almost giving the answer, but I'm giving different
Mm,
scenarios, and then they can say, "Oh, I didn't think about this. Maybe that one makes more sense to me. I'll try that." And so in that way, I'm not giving the answer completely because I don't know. Especially like the virtual coaching, it's like I don't actually know because I haven't climbed that thing. So it is a lot of like, we just got to try some different things and explore. Like, I think exploration is really like that. That's the term
I see.
coaching that we
And
use. Yeah.
and at which point you let your client conclude that maybe they just need to be stronger?
Um, so that is a question where it's like, does this feel like a move? Um, like after trying everything, you've tried to change your technique, you've tried to change your body position. At the end of the day, does it just feel like you can't hold on? Is that why? And if it's yes, then okay, like let's work on your strength. Sometimes, sometimes we'll do that. If I'm working with a new client and uh like they always send me at least 10 videos like I need to watch. I need to see a ton of videos in different terrain, ideally of them failing. It's always failing videos.
So
Um,
failing give you a lot more information, don't you?
oh yeah, it
Okay.
is like a magnifying glass on what is going wrong, you know. Um, and again, it's like these categories. Like most of the time people are not strong in their shoulders, they're not strong in their fingers. They probably don't have core awareness. So whether, a lot of it's rare that I've had clients who are actually very strong who don't have good technique. Do you know what I mean? Like those are my more advanced climbers. My advanced climbers are like, okay, we don't need to work on strength. You're actually strong enough. Let's work just on technique and refinement. Uh, but if you're a beginner intermediate climber, strength is going to be a big part of what they have to develop. So it's normally a given that okay, you probably have to get stronger.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's kind of interesting. So you were talking about you were really good at movement on tennis, but then at some point you realized that you were not strong enough. So I guess
Yeah.
that's no
Yeah.
just so. Uh, how did that feel for you? Just you were just thinking, wow, my technique can't pull it along.
Uh-huh.
Is it?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Like it was like I could execute the technique to a certain point if if the person hit me a very hard with a very heavy spin and I tried to do it, I just couldn't control what was happening. And so that control to me at contact, that was like, okay, there's a strength deficit there. Like I know what to do and I am doing it, but I can't control what I'm doing. And so the control is very much connected to strength.
then the way you describe it that made me feel like strength is actually part of the technique too.
Yeah. It also totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Right. So, because in climbing, I mean, this age-long debate, just like, oh, do you need to work on your technique first, or should you work on your strength first? And I
Yeah,
was just like, it's
totally.
a little bit
Oh,
hard to separate
mhm.
them,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yep,
Wow,
yep, yep.
cool.
It's kind of like this. We do like have a Venn diagram of like skill, strength, and control. Like they're all kind of like interconnected. Or I should say skill, control, and flexibility. Those are the three that we tend to put together. So
Control. Okay. Hmm.
control would be strength. That would be another word for strength.
I see.
Is
Yeah.
like if you don't have control, it probably means you don't have strength. Um, but control really means like we're looking at the movement and are you displaying your absolute strength in that movement? And so they all overlap. And flexibility or mobility is another part that we also need to work on, but we don't talk about a lot. Like I feel like I'm one of the only climbers that really talks about flexibility
Okay.
training.
But
Um,
nowadays on the World Cup circuit, that people talk about that a lot. They were
yes.
saying
Yeah,
if
at
you
that
can't fit
level.
in the box, then
That's right.
it's done.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And that's what wonderful. That's One thing about competition climbing that has been a gift, I think, to just climbing culture is that we're learning all of the things that we really should be doing in order to get better at climbing, you know. Yeah, yeah. But a lot of people believe that flexibility training is not worth it,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah, I can see that, especially from the outside background that because in the gym that sometimes they just put those holes there. That's the only thing that you can use.
that's right.
And outside just like, okay, I can get that full hole, but I smear on the thing and pull
That's right.
harder.
Yep,
Probably would
that's
work.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it feels easier or more tangible to work on strength as well, because you could just get stronger and then not have to use your feet as much. I see that
Yeah.
a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Ah, it's actually certainly very interesting talking with you about movement. Feel like I
Yeah.
gotta be sidetracked.
Yeah. That's okay. That's great. I love talking about it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
tell me about So right now I know that you have a website, Modus, right? It's
Yeah. Modusathletica.com.
okay.
Hmm.
So I saw that you sell some online programs,
Yeah.
and I like
Yeah.
that you have the name for the programs.
Yeah.
Not just like okay, shoulder stability, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hamstrung or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I have minimalist flexibility training, which is like a really good entry point if you're looking to improve your flexibility. We also have a hanging tough
right, hanging tough.
program.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
say
hanging
it
tough,
wrong.
that's
Yeah.
right. So that's a bar program where we just teach you how to hang from a bar, but you increase it's really for grip strength and shoulder strength for pulling, and it's a great precursor to hangboarding. So if you're not really ready yet, or if you're not even interested in hangboarding, the Hanging Tough program is a really good place to start. We do have a Pulling Strong program, which is just to develop a pull up. That one is offered a couple times a year. I don't always have it available. Yeah, so those are like our standard programs that you can buy anytime. And then we run courses. So we're about to do on the February 26th, we're running an 8-week climbing like group coaching program.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about the group coaching program. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is basically you get a program and we help you to adjust it based on your ability level and your schedule. Um, And then each week you have a module that's focused on mindset. So, because we know that especially if you're climbing outside, the mindset's going to play a huge role in how well you climb. So they're not all mindset modules, but a lot of them are. We talk a little bit about fear. We talk about expectations. We talk about trying to think. It's been a while since I made those modules. We have one on technique, like how to look at your technique, and also your why. Like, why are you climbing? Because that we actually open with that because uh, if you're on a pursuit to get better and maybe you're not always seeing the results of all of your effort, like we know that eventually you're gonna see those results, but in the moment it's really hard and you get frustrated. And we like to come back to like the why, like why are you climbing? And so for me, it's like, oh, I just love movement and I like to see how strong I can get. And so I try to remember that. And we have that as the first module so people can think about that over the 8 weeks that they're doing the training program. So really it's just like changing kind of like like how people think about training. Um, and it's also trying to teach people that training is actually practice. It's just practice. We're not actually putting you through a super hard 8-week program and then you're going to stop training and then you're just going to climb. Actually, this is like teaching you how to structure your gym sessions so that you're always progressing and you can do this for as long as you want, you know? So yeah, that's going to be our next one that we're doing. Yeah,
So sorry, this podcast might not be out before then, but
that's okay.
do
Yeah.
you so do you do that often? Like how many times do you do that
Yeah.
a year?
We'll do that again in the fall. So it's
Okay.
called Modus Performance Training. Yeah, and we'll do another one in the fall. And then in between, I think for spring and summer, we're gonna run a stretching course for, like normally in the spring and fall and the summer, it's easier to work on some other things instead of climbing, because people travel a lot or like they just want to have fun in the gym, but they can focus on other things. So we have Pulling Strong will be a group coaching program in the summer, and then we'll have a flexibility course, I think in the spring, maybe April or so.
So when you say group coaching, but you're also talking about it might be online, right? Is it
It is.
right?
It's all
Okay.
online group
So
coaching. Yeah, all of those.
what does the group play in the role? Like, do people talk to
Yeah.
each other or so?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they
Yeah,
share
so
it?
that's right. Yeah, we have a platform where we do coaching calls every week. Um, One to like help people with questions that they have specifically about the program, but also some of the mindset work, and how to scale the program. So if they're running into any issues, they're like, okay, I'm at this level. I can't do this move. How do I make it more accessible? And then we'll give them some other options. They also submit videos, so we can review. People can talk to each other on certain movements that they're doing. Um, and we have like the modules. We have a program, but we also have some modules on just like continuing learning. If you want to learn more about the physiology of flexibility, or even like when we're doing the pulling strong, we have a little bit on like why strength training works the way it does. Yeah, so it's really like a very in-depth course, and we give a lot, and there is a lot of coaching from the coaches to the participants.
So does each of them has some individual time and then they also have some group time? Do they share their
Mm,
video to other group members or
yeah, so I have to say there is no individual time. Like
okay.
people can actually, we get a lot of this because I think some people feel embarrassed about some of the questions that they ask. And so they will message us individually, but we do encourage people to just ask the questions in the group because everyone actually has the same questions. Yeah, so it's mostly group question and answer, group video analysis, group video calls that we'll do.
Now how many people you take in that group training?
Yeah, yeah. So Modus performance training will have anywhere between 10 and 30. And I would say
Whoa,
that's,
okay.
yeah, that is the same for all of our bigger group coaching programs. We are going to be launching a new program at the end of the year. It is strictly a mindset course. It's, I think, all about like managing fear. So that's going to be our new one, and we probably will have that as more of a smaller group, as kind of like the first iteration of it. I think that's going to be kind of like our most interesting course, and I think, yeah, I'm really excited about it. So yeah, that'll come out probably in September or October.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I definitely will include your website on the show now
Thanks.
and your
Awesome.
YouTube channel. I think all the links
Yeah.
is found you can find
Yeah.
from that website too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anything else you want to include? I think I have your Instagram.
Yeah, my Instagram, my YouTube, and on my YouTube, I have a couple playlists. So I have the podcast playlist. I have I have a climbing drill playlist that, if you're looking to improve your technique, we have a bunch of drills on there. And we also have a movement playlist, where it's on the ground. It's like locomotion style movement. Yeah, so there's some really fun playlists that you can just kind of like work through. So if you want, I can either send those links to you, or it's really easy. You can just find it on my YouTube.
Sure.
Yep.
I see. Give me 1 second. I lost my
Yep.
train of thought. Yeah. So are you still doing any bouldering with Climbers Colors
Yeah.
summertime? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're doing a course in May. I'm gonna do bouldering 1 and 2 in May. I think I might be traveling in the fall, so I haven't confirmed that fall date yet. So for sure we're running one course for each level in May.
I see.
Yeah.
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 Ah, May I'm
Yeah.
abroad, so I can attend.
Bummer. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
I'm
time.
trying to get not as scared outside bouldering myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I had such a
Yeah.
fun conversation
Yeah, thank
with
you.
you.
I really appreciate you reaching out.